Vance stood at the observation window of the Pathfinder's bridge, watching the empty space above the colony settlement. The sky was dark and quiet. Below her, the grasslands stretched across the horizon, green and peaceful. 200 kilometers away, families worked on their farms. Children played in small towns. Nobody down there knew that death was coming. The alarm started at noon. 3 ships incoming, the radar operator called out. His voice was calm, but his hands shook as they moved across the keyboard. No, wait, 6 ships. No, there are more. The readings are not stable. Captain did not move from the window. She had served in the Colonial Defense Force for 12 years. She had fought in 3 small wars and survived 1 fleet attack. She knew what a combat situation felt like. This felt different. This felt like the end. How many? She asked. We are counting 23 ships so far, the operator said. They are all at once. The visual systems are struggling to track them all. The ships became visible suddenly, like shadows turning solid. They were not human ships. The design was wrong, with angles that hurt the eyes and surfaces that seemed to shift in the light. The fleet had seen pictures of these ships, but pictures did not prepare a person for the real thing. These vessels were built for killing. Everything about them said death. Governor walked onto the bridge. He was a soft man designed by government committees to look trustworthy. He had the kind of face that people voted for. Now that face was pale and afraid. Get me a communication line, said, immediately. The communication officer nodded and opened a channel. Static filled the speakers for 3 seconds. Then a voice came through. It was deep and measured, with an accent that made each word sound like it was being carefully considered. The voice of someone who had never rushed a decision in his life. I am Lord of the 7 Void Stations and King of the Outer Trade Routes, the voice said. You are surrounded. You have 1 hour to surrender all access codes, all security protocols, and all military intelligence records to my forces. If you refuse, I will begin executing your colonists. I will kill 50 every 10 minutes until you comply. Your colony has 2,000 people. You have 1 hour. The channel closed. Sat down slowly in his chair. His hands were shaking worse than the radar operators. Around the bridge, the officers looked at each other. Someone's hand moved to their weapon, then stopped. What good was a weapon against 23 ships? We cannot comply with this, Commander David Hayes said. He was a military man, born and trained for moments like this, but his voice was not confident. If we give them our codes, they gain access to every colonial settlement on this world. They gain access to our supply networks. They gain access to our military positions across the entire sector. If we do not comply, he kills our people, said. His voice was hollow. Watch the ships through the window. She watched them move into position above the settlement. The weapons systems came online. Blue lights activated along their hulls. She understood then that this was not a negotiation. This was an execution. The Pirate King was not interested in talking. He was interested in power. She turned away from the window. I will go, she said. Everyone on the bridge turned to look at her. The moment felt strange, like the air had changed around her. Wood asked. I will go to his ship, said. I will offer myself as a hostage. That is insane, David said. He will kill you. Probably, agreed. But it will buy us time. More than that, it will give him what he actually wants. What does he want? Asked. Control, said. But more than that, he wants respect. A Pirate King's power comes from the fear he creates. Right now we are afraid and powerless. If I go to him, if I offer him a human willing to negotiate, he will be satisfied for a while. He will want to play with me to prove that he is smarter than I am, to show that humans are lesser creatures. Men like him always do. David shook his head. You are describing suicide. I am describing time, said. Time for our people to prepare. Time for us to figure out what we actually have that he wants. Time for our defenses to be ready. Looked at the Pirate King's ships. The weapons were still charging. The lights were getting brighter. He turned back to. If you do this, said, we will get people off this planet. We will prepare for a siege. We will send information to the other colonies. Send information about me, said. Tell them what I know. Tell them what I can learn. Every pirate thinks he is invincible. Every pirate loves to talk. Give me 3 days in his ship, and I will bring you back knowledge. She did not believe she would leave the ship alive. She did not believe she would come back with knowledge. She believed she would die in 3 days, and she had made peace with that possibility the moment she saw those ships appear in the sky. But she also believed that the Pirate King's ship was not designed for comfort. The corridors were narrow and lit by dim lights that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The air tasted strange, like metal and something burned. The gravity felt wrong, pulling its joints in ways that made her teeth hurt. She walked behind the armed guards, counting her steps and trying to remember the route. 703 steps, 3 left turns, 2 right turns, 1 elevator down. Then the doors opened into a massive chamber. The war room was breathtaking. The walls were made of screens, each one showing a different view of the galaxy. Star maps covered the ceiling. Real-time data about ship positions, supply lines, and military movements filled every available space. In the center of the room stood. He was massive, standing at least 8 feet tall. His skin was dark green and his eyes were the color of amber fire. He had 4 arms, each one ending in fingers that looked like weapons. His face was marked with scars that looked like they had been earned through violence. He wore clothes that were clearly expensive, made from materials that did not exist in human space. On his chest hung symbols of rank and power. Around his neck was a collar made of what looked like condensed starlight. "Captain Vance," said. His voice filled the room without sounding like it came from any one place. "I have heard about humans. You are from a young species. You live on a harsh world. You are supposed to be clever for your kind." Said nothing. She had learned long ago that silence was more powerful than words. "I am not interested in killing you yet," continued. "I have all the time I need. Your colony cannot run. I have ships blocking every jump point within 1,000 light years. Your people cannot fight. My vessels carry more weapons than your entire civilization can build in a century." He moved closer. Each step was deliberate, designed to show power. "Tell me about your defenses," he said. "Tell me about your military strength. Tell me about your leadership. Tell me everything you know about the other colonies." Met his eyes, she did not flinch. "I will tell you nothing," she said. Stopped for a moment, the room went silent. Then he laughed again. The sound echoed off the metal walls like knives falling. "Excellent," he said. "This is more interesting than I expected. You are proud. Humans are often proud, I am told. It comes from surviving that harsh world of yours. You believe you are stronger than you actually are." He moved to a tactical display on the wall. With one gesture, the entire system lit up. He showed her his fleet positions. He showed her his supply routes. He showed her his network of allies across 3 different sectors. He explained his strategy without being asked. He pointed out trade routes and military checkpoints. He discussed his plans to expand into human space within the next 5 years. Listened and watched. She did not take notes. She did not ask questions. She simply observed and listened and remembered. "I do this because I have nothing to fear from you," said. "You cannot leave this ship. You cannot warn anyone. You cannot stop me. In 3 days, you will tell me everything your colony knows. Then I will execute you, and your death will be meaningless. This is what happens when a lesser species encounters a greater one." He turned away and moved to another section of the room, stayed still. She watched how he moved. She watched which officers he trusted and which ones he was careful around. She watched how the younger aliens responded to his presence. Some were loyal, some were afraid, some were ambitious. One of the younger officers, a tall female with scales instead of skin, looked at like she wanted his power for herself. Began to understand. That night she was placed in a cell. The walls were transparent metal so she could see the ship moving around her. She did not sleep. She thought about everything she had learned. She thought about his confidence, his certainty that he was superior, his belief that humans could not threaten him. She thought about weakness. Every being had weakness. It was not always visible. It was not always obvious, but it was always there. Had spent her life learning to see the things that other people could not see. She was good at finding cracks in walls that looked solid. She began to plan. The next morning, the guards came and took her back to the war room. Was waiting. This time, he was eating something that looked like it was moving. "Have you decided to tell me your secrets?" he asked. "No," said, "but I would like to understand you better." Set down his food. He looked at her with genuine curiosity. "Why would you want that?" he asked. "Because I respect power," said. "I respect intelligence. You have both. I would like to understand how some 3 days became 5. 5 days became 10. The Pirate King never ordered its execution. Instead, he ordered her to stay in the war room. He wanted her to listen to his strategies. He wanted to explain his plans. He wanted someone to acknowledge his greatness. Gave him what he wanted. She praised his military tactics. She asked questions about his supply lines in ways that made him explain his entire economic system. She suggested problems with his alliances, and when he explained how he had solved them, she learned the names of every corrupt official in 3 human governments. She asked about his second-in-command and spent 2 hours explaining why that officer could not be trusted completely. She was building a picture of a vast, complex empire. More importantly, she was building a picture of how that empire worked, where the money came from, who benefited from the power structure, which officers were loyal and which ones were waiting for an opportunity to take control. On the 7th day, made his first real mistake. He showed her his command codes. He was explaining how he controlled his entire fleet from this single ship when he accidentally transmitted the encryption sequence to the war room display. He closed it immediately, but had already memorized the pattern. She understood the structure. She could work out the rest. "You see," said, "I am untouchable. My fleet obeys only me. No one can command them. No one can control them. You understand now why I am superior to all other beings." "I understand," said, and she did. On the 8th day, she made her move. She was standing near one of the younger officers, the ambitious female with scales. Spoke quietly, so only that officer could hear. "Your commander does not trust you," said. "He told me 3 days ago that you were stealing from his supply shipments. He said he was planning to remove you from power." The officer's eyes flashed with anger. She said nothing, but saw her hand move to a communication device on her belt. Move to another officer. A different one. She told him something different. She told him that was planning to replace him with someone younger. She watched as that officer's face hardened with sudden fear and jealousy. She did this again and again, carefully, never in front of, always in quiet moments when an officer was alone. She planted seeds of doubt. She created distrust. She made officers question their loyalty. On the 10th day, the first officer confronted about the stolen supplies. But he ordered an investigation. When the investigation found nothing, he assumed the officer was lying to him. He demoted that officer publicly. The message spread through the ship. On the 11th day, an officer asked for a private meeting with. The officer wanted to know why he had chosen someone else for promotion instead of him. Was confused. He had not chosen anyone. The officer left angry and convinced that was playing some kind of power game, testing his loyalty. By the 14th day, the entire senior staff was suspicious of each other. Officers who had served for years began to see each other as threats. They began to watch each other carefully. They began to report each other's conversations too, each one trying to be the most loyal. Did not understand what was happening. He saw it as loyalty. He did not see it as collapse. Watched from her position in the war room, she had done exactly what she needed to do. She had taken the Pirate King's greatest strength, his tight control over his officers, and turned it into a weakness. Loyalty and fear were 2 sides of the same coin. When you pushed hard enough, fear always won. On the 15th day, knew she had learned everything she could learn. She had the command codes. She had the names of the corrupt officials. She had the location of his main base. She had the financial records of his entire operation. She had the weaknesses of every officer on this ship. She had everything. That night, she sent a message. She did not use the ship's communication systems. She used something better. She used the personal communication device of one of the officers, the one she had talked to about the stolen supplies. That officer owed a debt to a merchant in a free port. That merchant was human. That human contact knew someone in the colonial government. The message was simple. Transmit the following data directly to Governor. Do not send it through the regular channels. This information must reach him within the next 2 days. She included everything she had learned, every code, every name, every location, every secret that had shared with her. Then she waited. The first sign was subtle. An officer failed to respond to a direct order from. When questioned, the officer claimed he had been coordinating with another officer and had not heard the command. It was a small thing, almost nothing, but eyes narrowed. He was beginning to understand that something was wrong. The second sign came the next day. 3 ships in the outer fleet reported equipment failures at the same time. It was unlikely to be a coincidence. Ordered an investigation. When the investigation found no actual problems, he became suspicious. He wondered if his officers were lying to him. He wondered if they were testing him. By the 22nd day, the first real conflict broke out. Two officers fought over the control of a cargo manifest. One officer claimed the supplies belonged to his division. The other officer said they belonged to him, tried to settle the dispute by consulting his records, but the records were unclear. Both officers accused each other of falsifying data. Executed the officer he believed was lying. Then he realized he might have made a mistake. He executed the other officer as well, just to be safe. That was when the mutiny began. It started small. A junior officer refused a direct order, then another one. Then an entire squadron of pilots requested a meeting to discuss their concerns about his leadership. Granted the meeting, thinking he would intimidate them back into obedience. Instead, they presented him with evidence of problems they had been ordered to ignore. They told him that his second-in-command had been stealing weapons. They told him that his quartermaster was selling supplies to his enemies. They told him that his entire command structure was corrupt and he had been too blind to see it. Had not been blind. He had simply trusted the information that had given him. Every problem they mentioned was something she had planted in his mind. Every doubt they raised was something she had created. He realized it then. He finally understood what she had done to him. On the 24th day, came to the war room alone. He did not bring guards. He did not bring officers. He came by himself, which was something he had never done before. "You did this," he said. His voice was not angry. It was something worse. It was understanding. "Yes," said. There was no point in lying. "I told you everything," said. "I explained my entire operation to you. I showed you my strategy. I showed you my secrets, and you used it against me." "Yes," said again. Walked closer, his forearms flexed, could see how easily he could kill her, she could see how much he wanted to kill her, but he did not move. "Humans are supposed to be weak," he said. "You are supposed to be afraid. You are supposed to be stupid. I have fought 1,000 species, and humans have always been the easiest to control." "You were never fighting us," said. "You were fighting your own arrogance. We just used it against you." Stared at her, his eyes burned like coals. "Human weakness is not what I thought," he said slowly. "I believed it was fear, but human weakness is patience. It is the ability to wait for the right moment. It is the ability to think far into the future. We think only about the present. We act immediately. We do not consider consequences we cannot see." He turned away from her. She had given him the truth, and the truth was worse than any 3 weeks later. The human colonial fleet surrounded its remaining ships. The Pirate King's empire had collapsed faster than anyone expected. Without its control, the officers had fought each other for power. The lower-ranked soldiers had stopped following orders. The entire system had fallen apart from the inside. The ships that were left were already damaged from internal conflicts. Some of them did not even have crews anymore. The officers had abandoned them, trying to flee with whatever treasure they could carry. Governor stood on the bridge of the Pathfinder as the colonial forces moved in. The weapons systems of his ships were powered down. This was not a battle. This was an arrest. The message came through the communication system at the exact moment predicted. Vance's final transmission. It contained the complete records of the Pirate King's operation. It contained the names of every corrupt official who had worked with him. It contained the locations of his hidden bases. It contained the encryption codes to his financial networks. It contained everything. But herself never came home. The video message showed her standing in the Pirate King's war room alone. Behind her, the screens showed the chaos she had created. Officers fighting officers, ships firing on each other, the entire system destroying itself. "If you are watching this," she said calmly, "it means I have completed my mission. The Pirate King underestimated humanity. He believed we were weak because we are not as physically strong as his people. He did not understand that our greatest strength is not in our muscles or our technology. Our greatest strength is in our minds. We can wait. We can think. We can see patterns that others cannot see. We can use an enemy's own pride against him." She paused. "I do not expect to survive this mission. By the time you receive this message, I will likely be dead. But I will not die without purpose. I will die knowing that I have destroyed a threat to every human being in this sector. I will die knowing that children on our colony worlds can sleep safely. That is enough." The video ended. The colonial forces found Vance's remains in the Pirate King's ship. She had been executed according to his orders, but not before she had transmitted her message. Not before she had left everything the humans needed to understand and dismantle his operation. Within 2 months, the entire criminal network was destroyed. The hidden bases were seized. The corrupt officials were arrested. The financial networks were shut down. The pirate king himself was captured, tried, and imprisoned. All of it came back to one woman. One human woman who had walked into the enemy's fortress and brought it down from the inside. The colonists on every human world learned the story. Mothers told their children about Captain Vance. Teachers explained how intelligence and courage could overcome any enemy. Soldiers studied her strategy in military academies. But the most important thing that humanity learned was this: we are not weak because we are not like them. We are strong because we are different. We survive on a harsh world. We think ahead. We understand patience. We understand that the greatest battles are won in the mind, not on the battlefield. Years later, when other species encountered humans in diplomatic negotiations, they were careful. They were cautious. They remembered the story of the pirate king who had underestimated humanity. They remembered that humans could turn any situation to their advantage through intelligence and patience. Vance's sacrifice became the foundation of human power in the galaxy, not through weapons, not through warships, but through the understanding that humans had something no other species possessed. We had the ability to think beyond ourselves. We had the ability to sacrifice everything for the future of our people. That was the secret that Vance had given her people. And it was enough to change everything. He could inflict on her. "Execute her," he said to the empty room. "You will not find anyone to execute me," said quietly. "Your officers are too busy trying to take your position to follow your orders. Your fleet is too busy fighting among itself to care what happens to one human woman. You have already lost everything. I just finished the process you started." Did not respond. He walked out of the war room and never saw him again. The guards came an hour later, but was already gone. One of the officers, the ambitious female with scales, needed someone to blame for the chaos on the ship. She needed someone to prove to the other officers that she was in control. She needed to give them an enemy. So she provided them one. Continued to talk to her every day. He continued to explain his plans and his power. She continued to listen and praise him. She did not tell him that she knew his empire was already falling. She did not tell him that within weeks his fleet would be destroyed. She did not tell him that every officer on this ship was now waiting for an opportunity to take his position. She simply waited for him to realize what she had done. "One like you became so strong." It was a simple question. It was also a trap. Began to talk. He talked about his wars and his victories. He talked about the enemies he had destroyed. He talked about the governments that had fallen to his power. He talked for 3 hours without stopping. Asked questions. Simple questions. Questions that made him feel like she was impressed. She was not impressed. She was mapping his mind. What she was saying was true. The pirate king wanted to feel superior. He wanted to prove his intelligence. That was his weakness. "Open a channel," said quietly. "Tell that we will send an envoy. Tell him that Captain Vance will come aboard his ship to negotiate." The communication officer did as instructed. The response came back within seconds. The pirate king's laugh filled the bridge. It was a sound like breaking glass, cold and sharp. "Excellent," said. "Send your captain. I will enjoy meeting someone who values her people. Send her alone with no weapons. If you attempt any tricks, I will destroy your colony." The transport ship was small and fast. Stood alone in the bay, dressed in her uniform, with nothing in her pockets and nothing in her hands. The ship hummed beneath her feet as it moved toward the pirate king's vessel. She thought about her family. She had no one. She thought about her achievements. She had none worth remembering. She thought about her life. It had been simple and ordinary. Now it was about to become a weapon. The ship docked. The doors opened. Armed aliens stood waiting for her, creatures with too many joints and skin that looked like armor. They gestured for her to move forward. She walked out into the darkness of their ship. She did not look back at the colony world. She did not look at anything except the path ahead. She had made her choice. Now she would see where it led.